So if you watched my last video, you'll know the engine I couldn't get to run at all. It had no compression. I thought about putting oil in the cylinders, hoping the rings were just stuck. But in the end I just thought, well, I've got the engine here in the workshop already. I'm not in any hurry. How hard can it be to just whip the head off and take a look? Turns out, it can be really hard. There's 5 studs and 5 bolts holding the head to the block. These engines have an aluminium head and steel studs. They're well known for having the stud seize up in the head. So, I was expecting a struggle. The bolts came out really easy. Almost too easy. Like someone had been here before. The studs, on the other hand, weren't going to give up so easy. I tried double nutting the studs, but they were just going nowhere. So I sprayed penetrating fluid on all the studs. I came out every day, tried undoing the studs, and gave them all a good spray every day. I pulled all the ancillaries off while that was going on. They were just going to get in the way anyway. I thought I'd take a look at the water pump as well. These are known for going bad, and I was wondering if the engine had overheated, so I was keen to take a look. And that wasn't what I was expecting. The pump wasn't in bad condition, it just wasn't there at all. So I carried on with the studs. The first one finally broke free after about a month. I was expecting it to be rustier, but it actually looked okay. Stud 2 came a week later. Stud 3 came a couple of days after that, and while I wasn't recording. Studs 4 and 5 didn't want to come at all though. I welded nuts on, both so I could get more torque on them, but also hoping the heat would shock them loose. It didn't work though. All that happened is I sheared one of the studs off right at the top of the head. So I thought I'd try the rope trick. The idea here is you feed some rope into the cylinder, and turn the engine over. In theory, the pressure will force the head off the studs. In practice though, nothing. I had to stop before I just broke something. So the Triumph Wedge Owners Association over in the US make something they call the head honcho. It's a really awesome tool and worth checking out. I'll leave a link in the description. If you're a member, they'll rent you theirs, but only if you're in the US. With how heavy it is, that makes sense, but over this side of the pond, no such luck. I still like the idea though and decided to make my own. Not as good as theirs of course, but I figured I'd hopefully only need this once, so I could take a few shortcuts here and there. All I'm doing here is making a rough mock-up so I can get some metal ordered. You can probably get the idea here. This attaches to the head and then bolts screw through it and drive down onto the studs, lifting the head off. The cam's in the way so I took it out. It needed to come off anyway. Here's a better template I made. The studs sit at a funny angle, so I had to make sure my bolts would line up properly. Cam carrier studs came out next. I'll be using bolts instead. I feel like I haven't had a montage for a while. Here's one. After all that work, I hope it does the trick. I put a fair bit of pressure on these, but it still didn't shift the head. All it did was strip the thread on one of the bolts. So I redid it with bigger bolts. The other problem was the bolts were walking off the studs, so I drilled the studs out a little to stop that. The new bolts work great. Except they didn't work at all. No matter how tight I screwed them down, the head still didn't shift. In the end I had to stop for fear of just breaking the head. So, I got a little desperate. I couldn't think of any other way to get the head off other than hacksawing through the studs like this. I figured the head was probably scrap anyway, but I could at least try and save the block. After I got through one stud, I thought I should get the chain and sprocket out the way. I was hoping with just one stud left I'll be able to jiggle the head loose, but still no luck. So it was back to the hacksaw again. Once I got most of the way through it, I figured I could just shear it off. At last. The block looked a little bit scratched from the hacksaw, but hopefully nothing too bad. Actually, apart from the remains of the head gasket, everything looks okay here. The head's a little scratched as well, but it can probably be saved. I don't know if that dark brown around the middle is just the remains of the gasket or something more sinister. Even after all this, I don't know why there was no compression here. So I started with the rest of the strip down, starting with the tensioner. And then the jack shaft came out. And then it was time to look at the bottom end. Oil pump and filter came next. And then off came the sump. There was a surprise waiting for me here too. I guess someone lost their dipstick. Luckily, doesn't look like it damaged anything. It took a bit of a beating though. Luckily, these bolts didn't put up any fight. I was kinda done with fighting with this engine by this point. The bearings look good. And now to get the pistons out. The crankshaft came next. And then I took the block off the stand and the end plate came off. So everything looks pretty decent here. I don't think this engine's got that many miles on it. Hopefully I can save this. I don't know what this is, I'm not sure I want to either. So I just gave everything a good clean up. Nowhere here either. One down, 3 to go. Guess I'm going to need some new gloves though. This was nasty, but it came out easy enough. I got the worst off the outside, I'll deal with it properly and then paint it later. The block looks in pretty good shape actually, apart from the hacksaw marks and the stuck studs. So I'm going to try and get these studs out now. I was hoping the drilling alone would shift them, but no such luck. I sprayed more oil down the holes for a couple of days. That didn't help either. So I tried welding a bolt into the holes. I was being careful not to heat things up too much and warp the block, but that meant the weld didn't hold. It didn't shift the stud either. So I turned to the tool of last resort, an easy out. Once it started making that noise, I just gave up. Well, I could at least get the studs out the head now. Well, one of them anyway. The other one's still stuck in there. I've done all I can now, and I think if I carry on I'll just end up making things worse. So I'm going to ship this off to a machine shop now and see if they can deal with it. But that's it for this episode. I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.